Good morning, everyone. Today's topic is Mantra Shakti, expanding the mantra practice. It's the third and last in a series of talks on the mantra practice. So let's begin by asking ourselves, what is the mantra? Man means to think. It means an instrument of thought. It's not lexical, dictionary related, nor is it a pragmatic word. It doesn't convey information about a thing. It points to something beyond mind and speech. It's a word of power, and that is why it is sometimes referred to as Mantra Shakti. There's an intrinsic connection between the word and the divine. So what then is the purpose of the mantra? It purifies the body and the mind. It calms the mind and frees it from distractions. It purifies and divinizes the world around us, and it leads us to self-realization. Now, there are various ways that a mantra is bestowed. It can come in dream or vision. There are several instances of aspirants receiving initiation from Swami Brahmananda in dream. It happened even without the dreamer ever having seen him in his body. Such a recipient only heard about him and felt attracted by his name. Excuse me. One devout young woman received such a dream, and she went to Maharaj to confirm it. And although Maharaj was seated with his brother disciples, she recognized him immediately and began to describe her experience. And just as she was about to reveal the mantra she received in her dream, Maharaj stopped her. He said, "Don't tell me. I will tell you what it is." And thus she was convinced of the truth of her vision. The mantra is also conveyed by writing on an aspirant's tongue. Sri Ramakrishna and some of the direct disciples were known to sometimes initiate in this way. Kali, later known as Swami Abhedananda, went to Dakshineshwar to meet Sri Ramakrishna. He was only a boy of 18. After some questions, Sri Ramakrishna took him to the northern veranda, asked him to sit on a cot in a lotus posture. He wrote a mantra on his tongue with the middle finger of his right hand and asked him to meditate on the Divine Mother Kali. Young Kali lost outer consciousness, and after some time, Sri Ramakrishna stroked his chest and brought him back to outer consciousness. A mantra may also be given orally at the time of initiation, along with meditation instructions. So we might ask, why does a mantra have such power? And for answers to that, we have to turn to the principle of the mantra. Swami Vivekananda, in his own lecture on Om, word and wisdom, he explained, all this expressed sensible universe is the form, behind which stands the eternal, inexpressible Sphota, the manifester as logos, or word. This eternal Sphota, the essential eternal material of all ideas or names, is the power through which the Lord creates the universe. Nay, the Lord first becomes conditioned as the Sphota, and then evolves himself out as the yet more concrete, sensible universe. He goes on, this Sphota has one word as its only possible symbol, and this is the Sanskrit Om. And by no possible means of analysis can we separate the word from the idea. This Om and the eternal Sphota are inseparable. And therefore, it is out of this holiest of all holy words, the mother of all names and forms, the eternal Om, that the whole universe may be supposed to have been created. So we might ask, why Om? Why not peace, love, joy? Why not these words? Because Om, A-U-M, is a generalized symbol of all possible sounds. Again, Vivekananda states, the letter A is the least differentiated of all sounds. Therefore, Krishna says in the Gita, in Sanskrit, I am A among the letters. Again, the throat sound is A, and M is the last lip sound, and U exactly represents the rolling forward of the impulse, which begins at the root of the tongue, till it ends in the lips. If properly pronounced, this Om will represent the whole phenomenon of sound production, and no other word can do this. And this, therefore, is the fittest symbol of the Sphota, Vivekananda tells us, which is the real meaning of the Om. In the Ramakrishna tradition, Om is usually the beginning of all mantras, followed by the bija, or seed word, which represents the aspirant's chosen ideal that he or she is most drawn to. The bijas were heard by the rishis, a sound manifested with a particular aspect of form of God corresponding to it. It's not heard with the audible ear, but by the inner ear of the heart. Swami Shivananda once disclosed, one thing you should know, that when that very mantra comes out of the mouth of a perfected guru, it becomes impregnated with a new power. Otherwise, it is nothing but a sound. The guru makes the mantra alive by his own spiritual energy, and he rouses the coiled up energy of the disciple. That's the whole secret of it, he stated. But the aspirant must also be ready. To illustrate this, Swami Shraddhananda, former head of the Vedanta Society of Sacramento and disciple of Mahapurush Maharaj, Swami Shivananda, used to tell one story on himself. Swami Shraddhananda was a great lover of Advaita Vedanta that he found in the Upanishads and in their teachings, even to the point that after his initiation from Swami Shivananda, direct disciple of Sri Ramakrishna, young Bimal told his guru that he wished instead to meditate on Om. Well, Swami Shivananda was not pleased, but he wisely allowed his newly initiated disciple to experience for himself his own folly. After several weeks, Mahapurush Maharaj asked him, how is your Om coming? Young Bimal tried and tried to meditate on Om for some time, until finally he realized he was not making the progress he had naively expected, and so was forced to take refuge in the sacred mantra and the instructions his teacher had given him. In his spiritual life, the mantra became his guiding light, as you can see for yourselves in his wonderful book, Seeing God Everywhere, and it's really a must-read for those of you who are initiated. How is the mantra incorporated into an aspirant's meditation, we might ask? Now, all words are consciousness. The mantra is a radiant light of consciousness, divine consciousness, what is called Shabda Brahman, sound Brahman. It issues from the source of the universe. In the Tibetan and Shakti traditions, we read, hear all sounds as mantra. In other words, one can hear all sounds as proceeding from the sacred realm. It's an actual experience. The intent of the aspirant to realize this is Shakti, the power behind the mantra, the form of the chosen ideal. In the meantime, the mantra, through the Guru's instructions, is incorporated into one's meditation. It's a process of gradual purification of the mind, which leads to systematic concentration of the mind, and finally and ultimately absorption, then union, what is called samadhi. Now we might ask, how can the mind be quieted by the mere name of God? Well, Ramana Maharshi explains, when japa becomes continuous, all other thoughts cease, and one is in one's real nature, which is dhyana, meditation. We turn our mind outwards on things of the world and are therefore not aware of our real nature, being always japa. When by conscious effort of japa or dhyana, he goes on, we prevent our mind from thinking of other things, then what remains is our real nature, which is japa, the sound body of God. Ram Prasad sang, I have tied the divine name of Mother Tara in a tuft of hair in my head. I am ready to depart from this world, singing the name of Durga. So the name is poetically tied to the tuft on the head, which implies the name of God is intimately present in all three states of consciousness, waking, dreaming, deep sleep, a very high state. For Ram Prasad, the distinction between the Divine Mother and her name had disappeared. Complete absorption in the vibratory presence of the Divine Mother is japa. Even distractions are expressions of the Divine Mother. He's saying, all that you hear are indeed mantras of the Divine Mother. The Mother's body is made from the 50 letters of the alphabet, he goes on. Each letter generates a different name. Swami Shraddhananda explained the mystical experience this statement points to. He said, the world of sound is heard as a cosmic and spiritual reverberation of the aspirant's mantra. In fact, any sense impression can be experienced as an expression of the mantra in an exalted, blissful state. In the Chandogya Upanishad, we read, verily, all this universe is Brahman. So the mantra is a tremendous aid to concentration and meditation. How, we may ask? The mantra repeated while the mind's eye is fixed on the form of God in the heart. Why are they linked together like this? The mantra and the form of God. Because the mantra is the same as the form of God. For example, if I call your name, you come. So also, by calling the name of God, there is in truth an inner response of the heart, the spiritual heart. But it takes time to realize this. The mantra must first be practiced with faith and concentration. This regularity of practice will then lead to increasing subtler phases of mantra vibration, until eventually we experience the supreme unity. Swami Shraddhananda explained, the actual repetition of the mantra goes very deep. It occurs not only in the mouth, but it also goes to the deepest core of one's personality, to one's consciousness itself. One should remember, he said, that repetition of the mantra is God's company, because the mantra is God. Such repetition takes place in meditation with the eyes closed and with the mind's eye focused on the chosen ideal in the heart. Now, what about meditation with the mantra? How does that work? The yoga scriptures speak of 6 spiritual centers in the body. There are 7 chakras that correspond to various physical or mystical experiences. And the Kundalini is a huge reservoir of spiritual energy situated at the base of the spine. When the Kundalini is aroused, it travels up to the 7 centers of consciousness. When the mind is attached to worldliness, it dwells in the 3 lower centers. Sri Ramakrishna explained, the first 3 planes of the Vedas may be compared to the first 3 yogic centers namely the Muladhara, Swadhisthana, and Manipura. With ordinary people, the mind dwells in these three planes, at the organs of evacuation and generation, and at the navel. Ramakrishna continues, when the mind ascends to the fourth plane, the center designated in yoga as the anahata, the heart, it sees the individual soul as a flame. Besides, it sees light. At this, the aspirant cries out, "Ah, what is this? What is this?" The aspirant's mind then no longer wants to run to the three lower planes of consciousness. The fifth center is at the throat, called the Vishuddha center, or chakra. Vishuddha literally means very pure. Sri Ramakrishna said about this center, when the mind rises to the fifth plane, the aspirant wants to hear only about God. In this connection, Swami Turiyananda once told Swami Pravrajika, Sarada Devi was always established in the Vishuddha chakra, even when performing the most menial tasks. The sixth center is the forehead. Swami Pravrajika explained, when the mind reaches this center, there is the direct vision of God, day and night. Even then, there is a little trace of ego left in the aspirant. Sri Ramakrishna described, the sixth plane and the center known by the yogi as Agya are one and the same. When the mind rises there, the aspirant sees God, but still there is a barrier between God and the devotee. It is like the barrier of a glass in a lantern, which keeps one from touching the light. He added, King Janaka used to give instruction about Brahmajnana from the fifth plane. Sometimes he dwelt on the fifth plane and sometimes on the sixth plane. The seventh center is at the top of the head, the Sahasrara, the 1,000-petaled lotus in the brain. Beyond visions, it is the knowledge of Brahman. Sri Ramakrishna explained that heart is best for meditation. It is the heart where one should meditate. There we visualize the full blooming lotus in the region of the heart, the seat of our chosen ideal. Swami Shraddhananda explained, by repeating the mantra, the aspirant should first think that the mantra is purifying the seat of the Ishta and making it radiant. The student should seek and ask about the inner abode. Well, now we may ask, what is the inner abode? The Chandogya Upanishad describes, within the city of Brahman, it explains, which is the body, there is the heart, and within the heart, there is an abode. It has the shape of the lotus, and within it dwells that which is to be sought after, inquired about, and realized. Typically, an aspirant meditates using two techniques simultaneously. He or she visualizes the form of the chosen ideal in the lotus of the heart, shining in the light of luminous consciousness, while directing the mantra toward the chosen ideal. These two activities eventually emerge into one. The sound of the mantra becomes one with the form of the chosen ideal. This is an actual experience. Because both the sound of the mantra and the form of the chosen ideal are eternal, pure consciousness. Swami Shraddhananda explains, the experience of hearing the mantra and seeing the Ishta is unified in consciousness. The state of mind in which these two different experiences become one is called pragya, or pure comprehension. Says the Katha Upanishad, the self is realized only through pragya. In the Vedic days, a sacrificial fire was started by wrapping two pieces of wood together. In the Svetasvatara Upanishad, it uses this process to illustrate the technique for meditating with Om. The body is the lower piece of wood, and Om is the upper piece. Repetition of Om with faith and contemplation on its meaning is like rubbing together these two pieces of wood. Swami Shraddhananda explains this repetition raises the mind to subtler and subtler levels of consciousness until it gradually comprehends the indwelling pure consciousness, our own true self. Self-knowledge is the fire kindled by the friction of the word, the fire kindled by the friction of the word. This is a mystic state of higher union that comes from meditation on the mantra. In the Upanishads, we find that all sounds spring from the ultimate primal sound, the pranava, which is Om. Brahman is the totality of existence. Om is the totality of existence. Om is the word symbol of Brahman. Again, Swami Shraddhananda. While repeating Om, the meditator should think that the self hidden in the body is like the latent energy of heat in the wood. By the practice of repeating Om, the fire of self-knowledge is ignited. The self is the chosen ideal. Instead of Om, one may use one's own mantra. Now, all mantras have personal and an impersonal aspect of the divine. When we meditate on the personal God, the form ultimately melts into the impersonal reality. In this case, during meditation, the mind goes from gross to subtle until it merges in Om. All thoughts arising in the mind will disappear into Om. All experience will become Om. What remains is Om, the anahata, the unstruck primal spiritual vibration. Finally, Om merges into the silence of the self. The Swami explained, when pressure is applied to a body of water in an enclosed vessel, that pressure will exert an equal force in all directions. During japa, we should think that the holy sound is reverberating through every fiber, every cell of the body. It is exerting its force on every nerve, every muscle, every organ, every breath. So let us direct Om to every thought, every emotion, and they will become purified. Om is Shakti, the spiritual power that transforms body and mind. The Mundaka Upanishad describes another meditation. It says, affix to the Upanishad, the bow incomparable, the sharp arrow of devotional worship. Then, with a mind absorbed and heart melted in love, draw the arrow and hit the mark, the imperishable Brahman. Om is the bow, the arrow is the individual being, and Brahman is the target. With a tranquil heart, take Om, the Upanishad states. Lose thyself in him, even as the arrow is lost in the target. The imagery of shooting at the target with a bow and arrow is a strong visualization. Visualize as though the individual self or mind, as it were, is the arrow. As the archer, we fix our arrow self in the Om bow and aim at the target of Brahman. The act of shooting the arrow is likened to the mental act of meditation on Om. The mind sharpens its aim by repeating Om. With practice, one-pointedness is achieved. The one-pointed mind meditates on Brahman as pure consciousness. Again, Swami Shraddhananda. Through meditation, the mind becomes unified with pure consciousness, which is revealed as the meditator's true self. Om is the highest reality and all that exists. In the Mandukya Upanishad, chapter 1, verse 1, we find, Om is indeed all this. All that is present, past, and future is indeed Om. And whatsoever transcends past, present, and future, that also is Om. So what's the true nature of the mantra Om? That also applies to other mantras. Swami Shraddhananda. The ishta of the mantra placed on the chosen ideal during contemplation leads first to the vivid living presence of the personal aspect of God, and then finally merges into the soundless Brahman. Swami Brahmananda explained the process and the stages of unfoldment. He said, first worship the chosen ideal mentally with flowers, incense, etc., and then practice meditation and mental japam. In purely mental japam, the mantra is repeated without moving the lips. But in ordinary japam, the mantra is repeated silently with the movement of the lips. He goes on, as you meditate on your chosen ideal, think of him as bright and effulgent, and that everything shines because of his light. Think of him as living and conscious. As you continue thus, the form of your chosen ideal will gradually melt into the formless, into the infinite. Then will follow a vivid sense of the living presence, until finally the eye of wisdom will open and the infinite will be directly perceived. Ah, Maharaj said, that is another realm, far beyond this universe. After this experience, the universe appears as nothing. The mind is dissolved and you experience savikalpa samadhi. This leads gradually to the realization of the nirvikalpa samadhi, absolute union with God. This experience is beyond all thought and speech. There is nothing to be seen, nothing to be heard. All is infinite silence. It is beyond duality and non-duality. If the aspirant cannot meditate in the heart, some gurus recommend bringing the ishta out from the heart onto a lotus stem, then placing the chosen ideal on the lotus facing the meditator. The meditator then repeats the mantra in his or her mind and directs it to the external image of the chosen ideal. But it's important to know and try to feel by directing the mantra that the form of the ishta is enlivened with consciousness. Swami Shraddhananda. The aspirant will find that the sound of the mantra itself is seated on the altar as the ishta's image. That's a very high experience. The name of God is God himself. We can apply the power of the mantra inside and outside of ourselves. Our body consciousness is a terrible burden. It causes us to forget our true nature, which is pure consciousness. So we can let the mantra be placed all over our body. The physical body will then become a spiritual entity. Ram Prasad. He's saying the name of Mother Kali is the heavenly wish-fulfilling tree that I have planted in my heart. I have sold my body in the marketplace of the world and bought in exchange the name of Mother Durga. Now, sold the body means to be freed from all body consciousness. The holy name has taken its place. We can then direct the mantra to our mental waves. The mind can then become illumined with the light of consciousness. It becomes our spiritual companion. So long as the mantra is with us, God is with us. Wherever the mantra is placed, the divine is revealed there. Now, what is the stage of the privation of the mantra? Sri Ramakrishna tells us that the body of the devotee is a playground of consciousness. During meditation, the mantra is invoked in the heart. Before leaving our seat of meditation, the mantra is brought out from the heart. The meditator can send consciousness of the enlivened mantra in all four directions. This is the practice of the expansion of the mantra. The mantra is no longer concealed and confined to the throat or the heart. We know spiritual transformation of every object takes place when touched by the mantra. Let the mantra be directed to our eyes. Wherever our eyes fall, consciousness radiates from the object or person we see. So our sensory experience can then becomes conjoined with and equated to the repetition of the mantra. Before the mantra can be repeated audibly or mentally, the mantra is subtle sound. Swami Shraddhananda explains. Now sound has been transformed into form. The aspirant sees the patterns that are floating in the mind as the expression of the mantra. Mantra consciousness is thus extended to all forms, seen by the eyes. By the touch of the mantra, the physical ears become transformed into divine ears. Whatever sounds enter the ears are not ordinary sounds. They are vibrations of the mantra. So also touch, smell, taste are companions and vehicles of the expanding mantra. Every sensory experience becomes the bliss-filled mantra Shakti. Any other part of our body can be spiritualized by the mantra. We can see our thoughts rising and falling on the ocean of consciousness, which is the mantra. Distractions are dissolved by a brushstroke of the mantra, which is higher consciousness. Or distractions can be replaced by bringing the mantra forward in the mind. Then all other thoughts and sound vibrations are drowned out. We can use our spiritual imagination to join our heartbeat, our breath, the flow of our bloodstream and nerve currents to the rhythm of our japa. This is higher states of consciousness. We then see how our body becomes a playground of consciousness, mantra Shakti. In the Kena Upanishad, chapter 2, verse 4, we read, one who realizes the existence of Brahman behind every activity, whether sensory, perception, or thought, that person alone gains immortality. So in conclusion, the repetition of the mantra lifts the mind of the aspirant from the phenomenal world to its identity with the Supreme Self. We begin to feel this universe as a projection of the mantra as sound Brahman. So also any object may be merged into this sound Brahman. In the Yajurveda, we read this. Om Purnamida, Purnamidam, Purnat, Purnamidachyate, Purnasya, Purnamadaya, Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Filled with Brahman are the things we see. Filled with Brahman are the things we see not. From out of Brahman floweth all that is. From Brahman all, yet is he still the same. When the universe merges in Brahman, it remains as a bindu, a point. The point has no dimension, neither far nor near, neither big nor small. The mantra is not a geometrical point. It is the minutest, non-measurable, inexpressible totality. St. Augustine aptly put it, God is a circle whose center is everywhere, whose circumference is nowhere. In Gaudapada's commentary on the Mandukya Karika, he asserts, one who is known Om, which is without sound, and is of infinite sounds, and which is ever peaceful because of the negation of duality, is the real sage and none else. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto us all.